Morris Carter, Councilman, will be lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a prayer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Father, we come to you tonight. We ask you to give us your guidance in the decisions that we make for the citizens of Boonville. Amen.
Mary, when you're ready, if you would call roll, please. Carter.
Here.
Ehlers. Here. Heaton.
Here.
Young.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Meadows. Here. Beach.
Here.
Livingston.
Here.
Hearing of citizens' comments. At this time, if there's anyone who would like to make a comment, we ask that you go to the podium. You have 5 minutes. If you would please state to the public your name. And I would like to tell everyone we're not being televised on cable this evening.
I needed a haircut. I'm glad to hear it.
Oh, okay.
Good evening. Thank you. About a month ago, I poured some concrete at one of our local parks here in town, and it was a little bit unusual. So I called a couple people that I had worked with before, and they come over and helped me, and everything went okay. We sat down to lunch. This one fella looked at the other, and he says, "You know, Boonville is the cleanest town I've ever worked in." The other fella said, "They must thank a lot of their kids because they got good-looking parks." Now, these people have worked probably in every town around like myself. And I went home, and in 15 minutes' time, I wrote over 50 towns that I had worked in during my career. And I had to agree with them. My comment is this: Boonville is doing a heck of a lot of things right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leonard.
Thank you, Leonard. I'm sorry we're not on TV tonight. Can you come back in 2 weeks? Repeat that verbatim.
Can I be excused?
Yes, you may. You did good.
Basketball.
I know, and you know
That's my
what?
hobby.
I know, and I know you've got a lot of other things to do, and I really appreciate that you came and shared that with us. Any other comments? Mr. Lang, yeah, come on up.
Thank you. I almost got here too late.
If you would tell everyone who you are and sign the paper. And
I'm Bill Lang. Okay, I just want to make a comment in regards to Logan's Lake Road. I made some comments before when he was down at the fire station on a temporary basis down there. The last concrete pour was there, since we're talking about concrete. I think it was 100% above what would happen before. And I just want to compliment you, whoever did the last job was so much better than the previous jobs, as far as smoothness is concerned. And I just want everybody to kind of know that I kind of appreciate that happening without me going down the road and bucking all the way through the process. I kind of had a little laugh the other day. Farmer had told me that he had an awful time in certain areas of Logan State Road staying on his tractor seat. And I thought, well, that's just something to talk about, not to worry too much about it. Till yesterday, the ice storm, not yesterday, but the day before, there was a double four-wheel rubber-tired high lift. I think it came from the sale barn. I think it's the one they use out there for moving things around. At least it headed that direction, and it ended up over here on Main Street by Walmart. And so I guess he'd come over to help move snow and everything else. So Anyway, I come down Logan's Lake Road there by right above Runnelbaum's Lake, and he was having an awful time with that thing, and I noticed about 5 or 6 cars behind him. And I think in the lower part of it, when I come down the hill, he was doing about whatever maximum speed would be his tractor would be. But as soon as he hit that washboard, well, then it like to throw him off the seat. He was sitting there going down the road like a jackrabbit, you know. And he had to just shut her down about 10 miles an hour. So I just want to let you know that the last pour was so much better that he could keep full speed. Otherwise, he got slowed down to 10 miles an hour because there's no shock absorbers on tractors, you know. And you have to go up and down to the seat as the tractor goes up and down. So if you can stay on the seat, well, you're lucky. But I did appreciate the last pour because it is so much better. And I just want everybody to know that keep that kind of quality of work going. And if you get a chance to get that grinding machine over here and grind them bumps down, make it smoother, it'd be so much better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Any other public comments? We have a special presentation. Laura, if you'd like to come on up. Laura Gramlich is here.
Good evening. I'm Laura Gramlich, and tonight I'm representing the Kemper Military School and College Alumni Association. Back in October, we had our annual reunion, and at that point, Julie was at our meeting, and we roughly presented to her a penciled drawing entitled After the Parade. And Gary Blankenship, one of our alumni, commissioned that limited edition and then has so graciously framed it. And so I'd like to officially present it to the city tonight and thank them for the efforts that they have put forth to continue a nice relationship with the Alumni Association and how much we appreciate everything that they do for the Alumni Association. And when our alumni come back for the weekends, how gracious they are to them. And we with sincere appreciation, would like to present this as a little token of our esteem. This is the portrait held after the parade.
Nice.
I didn't photobomb.
Thank you all.
You did.
You can say the same, Susan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I should have photobombed
That was prejudicial.
Okay, any other public comments? Moving along, approval of the minutes of the December 2nd, 2013 council meeting. Those were in your packet. You've had the time to look those over. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, they'll stand as presented. Consent items, we have none. Presentation of accounts and claims. Mary, when you're ready, if you would please read that.
Ordinance appropriating money. Be it ordained by the Council of the City of Boonville as follows. Section 1, for the purpose of paying salaries and various accounts against the City of Boonville, which have been allowed by the Council at the regular meeting thereof on December 16, 2013, the sum of $346,581.96. General Fund, $161,839.51. Sanitation, $29,644.17. CIP tax, $12,169.42. Waterworks, $11,944.32. Capital projects, $4,836.45. Wastewater, $48,053.82. Tourism, $3,435.55. Gaming, $74,658.72. Parks Water, 0. Section 2, the bookkeeper is hereby authorized and instructed to draw checks on the respective city bank accounts in favor of the persons whose salaries and accounts have been allowed as above, amounting to $346,581.96, being the total amount of money above appropriated. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect and be in force from and after its passage. First reading on December 16, 2013, read for the second time this 16th day of December, 2013, since a copy was made available prior to the meeting.
Second reading, title only.
Ordinance appropriating money.
Mark?
Mayor, I move we approve this ordinance.
Morris?
Second.
Questions or comments? Roll call.
Carter?
Yes.
Ayers?
Yes.
Heaton?
Yes.
Young?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Meadows?
Yes.
Beach?
Yes.
Livingston?
Yes.
Unfinished business, item A, revolving loan program presentation. We have Tom Halford and Wilbert Meyer here from the IDA. Tom, would you like to come to the podium? Oh, he said you would, so.
You should have information in the packet. And I guess more or less chosen to put together a package, a policy, and also an application in regards to what the council was going to give for the IDA to administrate on a revolving loan fund. Ned had been involved in some of this earlier on in an individual that he had contacted earlier known as Enterprise Development out of Columbia. We visited with her. Her format, policies, applications had been used and had been proven to be worthwhile. Any hiccups that she had ran across, she had corrected. So we more or less just plagiarized what she had. We tweaked it. Harry Enderly from the bank was on the subcommittee with me, and we tweaked it or with his guidance as to where we stood on a lot of the checks and balances as to what loans, how much, and et cetera. As you will see, and there's a typo, we went through this many times, and Wilford just pointed out there the loan terms was originally it was $5,000. It's $7,500 is the maximum loan amount. You'll see right under that two lines down that says 2,501 to 7,000. That should be 7,500. And if you have any questions, either Wilford or Kate or I will try and answer.
Any questions? Morris?
And Tom, only thing is there any place in here where it's going to require them to have insurance?
Help me. Wilford, do you remember seeing that? You may not be in there.
Well, I mean, I think that should be one of the requirements.
Okay.
Well, whatever business would be, yeah, I'd say general, just, no, not just liability. We want something to protect the building.
Fire.
Property.
Yeah.
Property.
Property.
Property more than liability, yeah, of course. Some of these
You
folks
know,
are.
where if something happened to the building, we'll at least be able to get our money back.
No problem. We can revise it. Yeah, we can put that in.
Steve?
Steve?
Can you borrow up to $7,500 and get to 2.5% if you pay it back within 2.5 years?
Mm-hmm. The way I'm seeing it. I'm going to say yes, Steve.
Thank you.
No?
I just wanted to add a comment to Morris's, and that is, I know from a banking standpoint, like if you were to ask Harry, he'd probably tell you if the building's collateral to this loan, then of course they're going to make them have insurance. But just due to our previous experience in town here, I think we got to go over and beyond and have something attached, some kind of proof attached to the loan, guaranteeing that they have insurance on the collateral. Yeah, I know, like I said, if you ask somebody kind of in passing, I think they'll tell you, well, that's standard.
I don't think you have to be the owner.
But that doesn't necessarily mean it's so.
So you're wanting to see something of a guarantee in there?
Well, I mean, my point is this: if it's a 5-year loan for $7,500, then there should be language in the contract that on an annual basis, the person shows you proof that he has insurance on the collateral, maybe coming straight from the insurer, the insurance company, labeling the city or IDA or MFA, whoever's doing it as somebody covered.
Sir?
Hooray. A couple of quick questions. The Noah's question can be answered by MFA being named as secondary insurer. I'm not quite sure of the language, but you can be named on the policy.
Sure.
As a secondary insurer, and then you automatically get a copy of the insurance. So that's the simplest way for them to do it. One of, and I'm sure Donna probably talked to you about this, one of the difficulties we did have with people as they got a little bit stretched was that they would stretch their payments. And it might be worthwhile to talk in the contract about ACHs so that you know that you're going to get the payments timely. And again, kudos. Good for getting us done.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
No.
the last comment I had was, I didn't notice a max, well, this is more of laying the groundwork between us loaning the entity money. Is there going to be groundwork as far as what the city's going to contribute to this fund on an ongoing basis? I know right now, I think we set aside, what, 120,000? Are we just, right now, are we just playing it by ear? If they were to start administering that money, obviously it'd probably take them a while to get rid of 120,000, but is there anything that's going to trigger, if this is a successful program and they, in 5 or 6 years, they've spent all the money, to come back and get some more, or are we just going to basically leave it open-ended for the 120 and see how it goes?
There aren't any definite mechanisms to make it recurring now. That would have to be somehow implemented.
So something we're just going to rely on MFA, if they think it's wildly
Yeah,
successful,
if
they'll
it
come
looks
back and
successful
say, ask for
and you
some more.
wanted to do a
Okay.
high enough priority to give it some more money, hopefully the thing does revolve, so you
Sure, eventually. That's,
hope you get some to respend. So.
okay.
Any other questions?
So where do we need to go from here? We still have the 120 that we, I think, set up, 4 or 5 years ago in that planning session, haven't done anything with it. When are you comfortable in me dispensing that? We going to do this through the MFA or the IDA?
Okay, MFA.
MFA, okay.
Do you need a motion, Earl? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would like some direction. We need something in a minute so the auditors see us writing a check for 120 grand to sister organization, so.
I move the city fund the...
Actually, Noah had his hand up. Sorry.
Excuse me.
It's all right.
No.
Do we count that as an interruption? Or?
No, that's fine. I was going to make the same motion.
Go for it.
That's all right. Go ahead and make a motion that the City of Boonville fund, the MFA revolving loan fund, to the tune of $120,000.
Okay.
Can I second?
Yes, you may.
Okay, second.
Any further discussion or questions? No.
Yeah. After I made that motion, I had a thought. Is it your preference, Earl, to just do the whole 120 at once, or would you prefer to? You would, okay.
Yeah,
Then
yes.
piecemeal it out.
Yes, it would be my
Okay.
preference to do that.
All right.
Any other questions? Roll call.
Carter,
Yes.
Ayers,
Yes.
Keaton,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes?
Meadows,
Yes.
Beach,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Very nice work. Item B, White Light's informational report. There was a discussion paper included in the packet, and Earl, are you going to kick this off? Or?
I don't really have
Megan?
anything else to say other than what was in the memo. You know, I think Morris asked for an update from Megan, and she worked on that for a while, trying to unearth something, and she'll report on that, and then we got a few other fleeting thoughts, and see where we end up.
I was never able to come up with any formal documentation of the program. The Chamber had administered the program for a number of years, starting back as far as 1984. It kind of came out of an interest survey with the downtown folks and was actually quite well run and done through the Chamber, a lot of volunteer hours to do the program. And initially didn't have a great cost, about $5,500 back in 1985. The lights then got replaced again about 10 years later. The cost then was $23,000. And again, at that point, considered a number of funding sources. It didn't just come out of one funding source. But at one point in time, the Chamber actually had to take a loan out to be able to get the lights replaced and paid back through fundraising opportunities. And I think then eventually it just came to the point where the incandescent bulbs have been very difficult to come by. They've become very costly, and volunteers have, not quite as readily available to do the amount of work that needed to be done. We had, when the fire occurred at the Stein House, that kind of took everybody back a little bit because those lights had to be restrung and taken down and so forth. So at that point in time, everybody kind of questioned, well, really, who owns the lights? Who's responsible for all this ongoing maintenance and inspection and so forth? And I think the issue really came up that in 2009 that the Chamber just really could not devote the time, the energy, and the resources to continue that program. They didn't particularly have an exit strategy that was put forth. They just couldn't do it anymore. So the lights as we see them today are as is, really not owned by anybody per se. The city doesn't own them. The building owners don't own them. The Chamber, is no longer supporting the program. So at this point in time, the lights are there. ML does provide the juice to them in 3 switches in the downtown area. And it costs the city for the lights during the Festival of Lights in September, and then for the month, approximately the month and a half over the Christmas holiday, between $400 and $500 for that electricity for those downtown lights. So that's about the program. Through some documentation that actually Kate and Lisa found, there was some kind of release that was developed, but cannot find that it was actually signed. The release probably wasn't real defensible in terms of what it was requesting. And so I don't think the focus at the time this program was put into place was on the legalities of who owned the lights or how they would be administered. The process was very much a grassroots, trying to get the downtown appreciated, wanting people to come down there and so forth. They looked at it, from what I can tell and what I talked to folks, the current building owners, and they see it as a beautification, preservation. They want more people to come down. They see it as a tourism issue. It does bring some people down. People comment when they come down that they enjoy the lights, that that's one of the reasons why they come or the reason they come. Not sure if we can ever quantify, sales generation or anything like that, but it does seem there's not a single person that I visited with, or probably that you all have visited with, that say, we don't want the lights. They all say they like the lights. They're not sure they know all the wherefores of them, but they do seem to appreciate the uniqueness of having the lights on the buildings. That's a fairly unique process. Obviously, from an ongoing perspective, there are burdens with continuing a white light program on buildings that we don't own and we don't manage, and I mean the city. Who's going to continue it? You need a sustainable management and control process. At some level, you probably need some inspection to make sure that everything's going well, that there's not a fraying going on or so forth. The cost of maintenance and replacement. In today's world, if the lights don't come on anymore, they would be replaced by LEDs. And Kate and Lisa have done some work on that.
And you're probably talking somewhere in the neighborhood to replace the light strings that we currently have on the buildings would be in the neighborhood of $70,000, and that would be for LED lighting, which is obviously much more efficient energy-wise, have much longer life, using the same hooks and so forth that are currently in the building. There wouldn't be any necessity to replace those, at least not as far as we know. So that price does include the lighting and the installation of those. I'm fairly confident. One of the specific questions in terms of liability or insurance, obviously the city would own the lights. They would be city property. They would be treated like any other piece of city property. They would be insured. The lighting system would be treated like any other piece of property, subject to deductibles and so forth. Assuming that we don't have probably the personnel or equipment to conduct that kind of installation, inspection, or repair, you would probably go with something like a lighting group that has their own equipment and so forth to put those up and inspect them. So you would be talking about a public contract that you would let, and so obviously you would have shared risk with that contractor for the installation and so forth. There would probably need to be some sort of written policy or process where we would have access. We can always get on the public sidewalks. The public sidewalks are accessible by the city, but we'd have to enter into some kind of policy with the building owners and so forth to make sure this is something they want to continue to do, and because these lights are being strung on their buildings. It has not been a problem in the past. I have not found any liability issues that we've had in the past. Just none. I mean, there's been no problems with the lights falling off. I think we had a storm that might have blew a few things around a little bit, but there were no issues. There were no incidents. There have been no injuries. There have been no fires. I mean, there's just been very little to worry about in terms of the lights. And I think actually the fact that they're on the buildings and they're very secure probably does make them less liable than, for example, lights that are strung on poles, wires, or trees downtown, so because those things tend to blow around. So in terms of a liability issue, we haven't seen any, at least not as far as I've been able to ascertain. Some of the things that folks talked about is wanting to do a little bit more with the lights. If we're going to make some kind of investment or continue the lights in any way, they thought about doing some things that some of the other communities that they know about have done, lighting ceremonies, additional events in relationship to these activities, and maybe even expanding, kind of get a theme. Apparently there are a number of towns in Missouri and elsewhere that kind of are known for their lights, and it kind of draws people. St. Charles, Washington, Missouri, a few others. And so that's one of the things that the Tourism Commission, I believe, has been particularly interested in evaluating what opportunities there might be for those. The city staff tried to encapsulate in the second page some of the options or the avenues that might be thought about in terms of all the way from discontinuing the lights to expanding, maybe changing, and looking at different opportunities and avenues for private management and control versus public management and control. And I think that's something that the city staff kind of always shook their head at, and we're limited here in the city of Boonville. If some project like this is probably going to be sustainable, it's probably going to have some management control and funding through the city. I mean, there's just no other organization that can probably do this to the extent that is probably necessary. The Tourism Committee did have a fairly decent discussion, significant discussion, I think, at their last commission. And Becky, I know you participated in that discussion and heard that. And the Tourism Commission was really quite taken by the option that there wouldn't be lights in the future, to the point that they felt that it deserved funding. that they felt that it was so important to continue that lighting in some format, particularly the buildings, that they'd be willing to devote some of their tourism funds to that. So I think that they saw it, and they felt that it could even be expanded and kind of to develop that as a starting point for future opportunities. And one of the concepts that they even talked about was, why just Christmas? Why don't we light up other times? Why aren't there other events or other things that we could appreciate? Because white lights seem to be kind of a celebration of a town or of an organization. And they felt that if you look at what downtown is now and what you might want it to be in the future, that if we were willing to invest in that and bring people and beautify, that somebody else might want to open up a store. So you're just not looking at tourism from people coming in and appreciating it, but if it looks like we're prosperous, then maybe somebody else will want to participate. So those are the kind of discussions that have kind of been had at the city staff level, at the tourism level, and that's pretty much what we found.
Mike?
I participated in the tourism meetings over the last year before Becky did. I agree that there is something beautiful about the lights, something unique about it in many ways compared to many other towns in the local area. I'd love to see them stay, but I don't see it as an infrastructure requirement for the city, for the city services. I understand we step in outside of the infrastructure of water, streets, and so forth when we also fund a tourism office. We also fund an economic development office or a mission. And I know that goes beyond clean water and police and so forth, but I believe you have to have a limit on what it is the city is really expected to do, and I think the lights are just beyond that. So I'd love to see it, but I think that there needs to be a private sharing in this, where just like the chamber stepped in and did it from the first place, that the businesses that are downtown would have to have a large portion of the costs associated to making this happen before the city should step forward and agree to do the other share, whatever that may be.
Kate, did you have any comments you wanted to make before we get too far along? No? Okay. Any other comments? Noah?
Yeah, I was sitting here trying to think of what my remark should be, and I think you said it better than I could have in that statement about as much as we love the white lights, as much as we think they're important to the downtown, your comment about them just barely being outside the scope of what I think we need to spend our money on right now hits it right on the head. I don't think I could have said it much better.
Steve?
You know, white lights are on at night when most of the stores aren't even open. I'm not sure you wouldn't be better off putting greenery and lights on the post downtown, and people can see that when they're shopping during the day. I think you could probably spend some money and spend it more wisely than you could on the white lights. I think there's some better options out there.
Any other comments? Ned?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. $88,000 when our revenues are soft kind of strikes me as being a difficult decision to make, particularly when the chamber said it best. Particularly since it was focused so much on their downtown members' businesses. In other words, the chamber was making a decision based upon their stated purpose to support everything about the city and the whole economy. And these lights are specifically downtown. It also might, well said, Noah, well said. Our responsibility as a government entity is to provide protection from evil and infrastructure so that everybody has an opportunity to succeed and to worship and to have fun and raise families and all of that. When we take that responsibility, we focus on an individual or one certain segment of our city, then we're calling that segment special. as opposed to treating the whole city equally. And I'm bothered by that. Mike said it a little differently than I did. This just, we don't have a responsibility to downtown as opposed to South Main Street or Ashley Road or wherever. We have a responsibility for it all. So I think this particular request, in my mind, is beyond what we should do.
What should we do?
I think we should let the private businesses decide what they can do and what they can't do, and let them put themselves together. And Julie, you and I know the history and the dream and the downtown things that we have tried to do for many, many years. This is not a city responsibility. This is the responsibility of the merchants and their organization. And I think that's where it should be.
So your ultimate, I have to agree, but I have to also say I have sat around this table for many, many years. Morris, Mark, you have too. This is not going to happen if we want the merchants to do it. It's not going to happen. And I think we all know that deep down. If we want white lights, it's got to be a function of the City of Boonville. And if you don't want white lights, that's fine. But I think most of the people in Boonville want white lights. And it is downtown, but downtown is the heart of your community. And it's where most of the people come. And, you know, I just think you're not looking at this whole picture. You're just saying, well, it's just for the downtown merchants, and I don't think it is. And if you wait for the merchants to do it, it will never happen, I don't think. So.
Yeah. I was just going to make a comment about loving the lights, of course. When I learned more about the costs involved and that it didn't sound like anybody really owns this function, it was concerning. I love the ideas that I'm seeing here, and I have to wonder if it's not time to have the city and the merchants and the chamber find a way to come up with new, reasonable ways to highlight the city. I like the ideas of the parks, but I think just supporting the ongoing lights as it stands right now doesn't seem like a real viable option.
Mark?
And I've been in everybody's situation, I guess, from being a business operator, a building owner outside of the downtown area, on the chamber board when these types of decisions were made, and I always kind of sat there and said, wait a minute, I pay dues, and I was on the board, but but aside from that, and you know, I understand I'm not comfortable with $70,000 and $80,000 expenditures all out of the city funds, but you know, there's maybe some other creative things that we can do that might lend itself through tourism. And I do believe, even with my feelings about other areas in the community, that we're an historic community. You know, people look at that, and frankly, my building on the south end of town isn't very historic. You know, it's a business, you know, things like that. And, you know, so those things are all concerns that I have. I agree with the mayor that, you know, frankly, I don't believe that if we back off without pressure and guidance, that I don't really think the downtown businesses are going to sustain that. And from a previous business owner, I'm going to tell you that a lot of them are going to say, you know, we'd love to, but if we do that, then I'm going to have to cut something else out in their own business. And not that we should subsidize them, but I think we need to look at it from a perspective of what are we highlighting in loose terms, for a historic community. And I'd say let's, get together with tourism and the chamber and say, look, it doesn't look like the city's going to fund this 100%. What can we do? And if it comes back and everybody else says, hey, sorry, spend your money and we'll do it, well, then that'll probably dictate my vote. But that's the direction I'd like to see us go. I like the lights. I think that people in town like the lights. I don't think most people will understand and maybe not even support $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 for lights. But, I think it's something worthwhile investigating and looking at from that perspective of, some sort of shared cost and benefit to the city through tourism, city funding, private funding, and let's face it, everybody is looking for funds someplace. We've got Save the Katy Bridge that's asking for money and donations, and we've got the chamber looking for things. So, it'll be tough to do, but I think it's a project that's worthwhile, and, frankly, I'd hate to see it just disappear, but,
Okay. Any other comments? Becky?
After attending the meeting this past week, and I really feel that the tourism group is very vested in looking at what can be done, maybe not on the scale that is done right now, but looking at what options there are. I think that they are interested in seeing what what our take on it is, if we're willing to put anything into it at all, talking to the chamber. They're not ready to let this go at this point. I think looking at different options. I sat in a meeting this morning. We have an out-of-town audit team at the correctional facility. They drove into town last night. Their first comment was, what a beautiful community this is, and the lights downtown, and everything lit up. And the same token, they said, but none of the stores were open. And they were staying here locally and ready to take a walk and a stroll downtown, get a bite to eat, and look in the shops. So I think we have to, look at something, and if we could encourage the stores to be open a little later, especially this time of year, that would be a benefit too. And the lights attracting people to our downtown.
Morris?
I was going to say, I think a year ago when this was brought up, I thought someone was going to bring some alternatives of things that we could do, like the trees or the post, and we never have heard anything from anyone on that. I'm not even sure who's going to do it. But I would like to just more or less refer it back to maybe the tourism and see what suggestions they could bring back to us.
Well, that number 7 there on the sheet is just some ideas that Kate put together from the company that provides the white lights. They provide a huge panoply of other alternatives, anything you can think of, and then some that you could do. And, the only attraction of that is that you probably get out of the private property issues with going on somebody's buildings, but you don't get out of the cost issue, so.
Ned?
I think I hear that from Mark, and I hear it from Morris and Becky. Is this the kind of thing where maybe we say, okay, tourism, we approve tourism, putting up $10,000, and maybe we find another 5 or 10 from someplace else, and we put that in the pot. And then we let the organizations get after it and see if they can't find a way to finish out the rest. And we were involved, as you'll remember, in the facade improvement program several years ago. And it was a concurrent funding where if you spent $5,000 or $10,000, then the city would come back and they would spend $5,000 or $10,000 to match it. And it was focused on the downtown. And did we have 3? Julie, do you remember?
I don't remember.
I know we didn't get much. We got very, very little in the way of participation. But the thing I liked about that program is that we put it out there. The city put it out there and said, yeah, we'd like to see these facades improved. We'd like to see the improvement of the buildings down there. And here's what we'll do. We'll match your your investment in the buildings. I think that's different from an infrastructure standpoint, Mike and Noah, than writing an $80,000 check for something that is specific to the downtown. And maybe that's worth looking at. I don't know what tourism is planning to do with the 10,000, Becky. I don't know whether they're just going to put that in the pot and let somebody manage it. But I'm really not for spending any money on this, but if there's a way to garner support from the downtown merchants to wake them up to participate in something that's good like this, maybe that's the way to do it, is that we become the motivator, or we become the little bitty spark that gets it started.
Why do we feel it's just the downtown merchants' responsibility?
They're the ones that benefit.
Do they benefit from them?
I don't know. I don't know if they get more business because of
Do
the
you
white
think-
lights or not, Julie.
Do you think Browning's Hardware sells any more nuts and bolts because they have white lights on them? I would doubt it.
I kind of doubt it too.
I don't think they're particularly the ones that benefit from it.
Well, I was going to say, the key is they got to be open.
Good point.
I mean, the only way the white lights is going to benefit the businesses downtown is they got to be open.
Well, I think we're back to the chicken and the egg.
Well,
I think at the same time, you kind of have to look at Main Street as an entry from the north. I mean, you could probably do stuff not only to Main Street, but your other entries around town. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that would be potentially good.
Yeah,
It's an entry to the town.
Yeah, we can look at other things, but I had someone call me the other day and said, we're kind of new to town. Where's the best place to go look at lights? What would your answer be? Somewhere else?
Edwards.
Probably.
Edwards' house.
Edwards' house. Thank you, Edward. But other than that, what is there? We have nothing. If we didn't have our white lights downtown, we wouldn't have anything. So it's fine if you want to pass the buck along to someone else that I don't feel is probably going to pick up the ball and run with it. But you have to be realistic and say it's probably not going to happen. So, Morris, did you have another comment?
that's the reason I like to refer it back to tourism. They might like to decorate each entrance coming in and then top it off with something downtown. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm
I have no problem with referring it, if everyone's in agreement, referring it back to tourism and seeing what they can do with it and bring some suggestions back. I think if you want this to succeed, you're going to have to put some money in it at some time. Everybody wants them. Nobody wants to pay for them. So it's not going to happen if nobody wants to pay for them.
Well, I think the
Morris?
city needs to put some money in, but we need someone to oversee the project.
Well-
It's not a project that we need to take on.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm hearing that tonight. Doesn't seem to me like anybody wants to put any money in on them. Noah?
Well, I think the good thing about sending it back to tourism is maybe we would get a different proposal. Because I think you're right. I think the way it's proposed right now, which to me, the way it's being proposed is, this was a project that the chamber started with downtown merchants, and somewhere along the line it became too expensive for them to handle anymore, and they've decided they don't want to pursue it anymore. And I think it's a bad precedence for the city to just pick up all the financial burdens of every failed project that organizations or individuals can no longer afford to manage themselves. I think it's a bad precedence. But, your comment about, your comment's duly noted about, is this a merchant's thing? Do we not all benefit from it? And if you look at it from that perspective, then where does it come from? But I guess the thing I just can't stand is I think Ned may have said it, just us writing out a check for $80,000 for lights at this time in our finances. But if it's a joint venture between public and private, then maybe if with a different proposal, maybe it'd be a little easier to swallow.
I don't think this was particularly a proposal. This is just the
No,
facts.
Sure.
And you are the ones that make the decision about this.
Sure, but when I say proposal, I think the perception of the public is that the city should just pay for this because everybody wants them. But when you start talking $88,000 for lights, it seems a little bit verbose to me. I don't know.
Becky?
It wasn't in Megan's history, and someone here may know, but in talking to some business owners this past week, they said at one time that the businesses were charged a fee per linear foot that was on their building, and there was some saying that, some businesses, I think, paid that, others did not.
That's right.
Then there's the debate in looking at, should it be the business that occupies that building, or is it the building owner that would take up that expense? And I think, there's maybe some alternatives and some things to look at, and some discussion that maybe needs to take place with some building owners and some business owners of who runs it. You've got some people that own a lot of buildings downtown that don't even live here in the community, but yet someone's in those buildings and profiting from being in those buildings. So maybe there's some other discussions that need to take place that would assist with the funding of it.
Okay.
I mean, I like the lights.
I do too. But somebody's got to pay for them.
Right.
And nobody is real anxious to do that. So, yes, Mike?
Is the Festival of Lights something that started as a result of these lights?
No.
Yes.
No.
Festival of Lights, when it first started, was the profit from the Festival of Lights was going to fund the White Lights maintenance program. And then it's been drifted away. Well, I've talked to some chamber members in the last couple of weeks, and they thought the Festival of Lights was still sponsoring it. And they were surprised when the profits from the Festival of Lights went to the food pantry this year.
But I think Mike's question is, did it start because there were lights downtown? Yeah, I think it did. They sort of copied an idea in another close-by town, which will remain unnamed, where they had a downtown festival and turned on their lights and called it the Festival of Lights. So, yeah,
So now that we have the Festival of Lights as an annual event, if there were no lights, would there still be a Festival of Lights?
I don't know that. I don't know that. Festival of Darkness. I don't know. Flashlights, the Festival of Flashlights. Steve?
Does anybody know how long these LEDs will last compared to the old lights? I mean, if you're breaking it, if they're lasting
Oh,
5
Kate and
times
Jerry are
more.
itching to answer this.
Advertise most LEDs to burn for 50 to 60 now. That's kind of in a controlled ideal situation. That's in your home. You got them up here on the side of the building and flat on the ground. They probably won't last that long. But I don't think we would have to, city or the chamber, or somebody would not have to replace half the bulbs every.
Right. So they should last longer than the old lights.
Yeah, so you're not going to spend $70,000 every year
Just
on
spread-
this.
yeah, spread
You're
over 10
spreading
years.
it out over 10 years. You're going to have some maintenance, but if there is some group that could maybe come up with maintenance costs or whatever, so. Well, shall we refer it back to tourism? We've kind of hammered this around quite a bit.
One last question, because it was kind of touched on but not touched on. The subject that I know is near and dear to our city planner's heart is corridor. And how we take care of our corridors to make sure that the corridors attract people to come in and be a part of the community. The issue of the lights is kind of a corridor issue, only because of the folks that come from north. It doesn't take care of the south, and it doesn't take care of the west. But I'm wondering if we could tag that item or that discussion onto what tourism talks about with regard to the lights. We've never talked about it, we've never really focused on it. But if you do a lot of traveling, particularly in the tourist areas, what you find out is that it's really important to those communities, and they work really hard at it. It might be something that would be worthwhile. Megan, am I stepping out of bounds?
No, that's kind of the entry to town that Steve brought up, and the corridor, and kind of cleaning up and highlighting some of those areas. And I think that was some of what Kate and Lisa had hoped to do too. Kind of the parks area, and kind of doing something so you highlight particular areas of town.
Do we do this referral by consensus?
Yeah, I think we've got enough direction from everyone, and Becky, you and Kate can take the news back to tourism.
Well, and I think too, I'm going to steal a line from Earl. I know Earl loves to say it's easy to come up with money one time, but having a reoccurring expense year in, year out, that's kind of where it gets difficult. So kind of keep that in mind in your discussions.
Okay, moving right along. Got some interesting topics tonight. Item C, presentation on Brownfields Voluntary Cleanup Program at Kemper. And Kate, are you going to be discussing this? Do you have any first?
I set this forth in the memo. Kate and Jim Gann had a meeting with a number of players in this area since we're moving down the road a bit at the Kemper facilities. You know, the Brownfield program's been around for a while. It's ostensibly there to help clean up environmental problem areas. And from there, it gets pretty complex and complicated. So Kate and Jim thought they had a pretty productive meeting, but the devil's always in the details, and she's here to present you a few of the details.
Few. And I have some corrections because I had a phone conversation today which cleared up some of my misconceptions. So I'll try not to use the acronyms because they fly around quickly and they get confusing. But essentially there's sort of, I say 3, but there's actually 4 programs. There's what's called the Brownfields Voluntary Cleanup Program, which is administered by DNR. There's site-specific assessments, which are actually also run by DNR. Then there's Environmental Improvement and Energy Resources Authority, which is the EIERA group. And then the Brownfields Tax Credit, which is run through the Department of Economic Development. They're all sort of together, but not, like anything that happens up there at the state. And the first program, the DNR, the Brownfields Voluntary Cleanup Program, it's exactly what it sounds. It's voluntary. You enroll in the program. The state helps you to manage or oversee that cleanup process, and I don't necessarily mean that they help fund it, but they make sure that you clean it up appropriately. The big key thing of that is that you have to enroll in this program to access the other program funds, which was the clarification, particularly for that EIERA funding. I had understood in the email that you don't have to be a member, but you actually do have to participate in the voluntary cleanup program. So this voluntary cleanup program is sort of the doorway into everything else the state offers, for lack of a better description. And the other thing that they do is when you're finished, they give you a letter of completion, which simply says that your property is now clean and you can develop on it. If there is some long-term stewardship issues, there may be a caveat, like you can't ever have a playground on this piece of lead smelting land that you just capped over. That's not safe. But generally speaking, they will do that. The site-specific assessment, we don't have to be in the Brownfields Voluntary Cleanup Program for that. It is also free of charge, so we don't pay anything to do it, which is sort of nice because those can be pretty expensive. And the state will do a phase 1 and phase 2, which the phase 1 is sort of like a swift overview of what's there, and then the phase 2 is more detail. I don't understand anything that happens in a phase 1 or phase 2, so don't ask for the details, but that's the basics. And then at the end of the phase 2, it pretty much tells you what you need to do to clean up your property or what they need to further study so you can clean up your property. So the next one is this EIERA, or the Environmental Improvements Energy Resource Authority. They provide below market loans and grants to eligible entities. The key here is that there's this phrase called a potentially responsible party, and without going into the legalities, the bad news is we're the potentially responsible party. So because we didn't because we didn't do certain things before we purchased Kemper, we took on all the liability. So there's nothing you can do about it except for you can flip ownership, which apparently happens quite often through these programs, into a nonprofit, like a community development corporation or some other nonprofit that your community may have, in which case you flip ownership to them. They do the work before they buy it. They make sure they know it's there. then they buy it for $1, they clean it up, and then you buy it back for $1. That's the way it works, and the state will gladly help you do all of that paperwork. Odd, yes, but there you go.
Maybe if we get someone to take Kemper for $1, then we just won't take it
don't
back.
Not so
Sorry.
Not interested. And I did want to correct, I said that it doesn't require participation in the Brownfields voluntary cleanup, but it actually does, and that was the clarification I got today. We can apply for those loans prior to joining the voluntary cleanup, but they won't give us any money until we are in the voluntary cleanup program. So that you can kind of run a parallel process. And the reason why they want you to do that is because the EIERA will actually pay for your administration fees as well. So, and just in case you're wondering, the reason why you want to flip it to a nonprofit and not a for-profit is because then you can get up to $100,000 per project, so in a grant. So if it's a for-profit entity, you won't get that in a grant. They'll just give it to you in a below-market loan. Finally, the Brownfield state tax credits. I just want to say on the outset, I don't really see how this could ever, in the future, in the current future, really help us, simply because it has to create 10 full-time jobs, not full-time equivalents, full-time jobs. And we, as far as I know, we don't have anything on the table that's sort of looking at that. But should we in the future have something that may work out and may be a good project, and again, you have to be a member of the Brownfields Voluntary Cleanup Program. So those are sort of the programs. When I talked with Catherine today, she said she had talked with her boss about this project here at Kemper, and her suggestion for moving forward was that we should go ahead and apply for the site-specific assessment, which is what they do at no cost, for a phase 1 and phase 2, and we should do the entire campus as one big parcel plus all the buildings and do it all in one shot. And then once we know what we have there and what we have and what levels of cleanup we have, and we have a strategic plan about where we're going, we may, to get more complicated, want to look at subdividing Kemper so that you have multiple projects so you can get more money through the EIERA instead of just $100,000 per project. So if you had 5 projects, you could conceivably get $500,000 to clean it up. And then you maybe unsubdivide it all at the end. That's up to you. So her suggestion simply was that we go ahead and do the site-specific assessment for phase 1 and phase 2, that we save the enrollment in the voluntary cleanup for another day. She had thought maybe we should enroll first because there's going to be some fee changes, but they decided that's not a good strategy now. So we could at the same time look at doing some of this through the EIERA group for Science Hall. If there's an interest there, I did speak with the woman who administers that program. She's also happy to come and try to explain it to you. She said we could probably get something done, I believe it was in about 6 months, 6 to 8 months. So it probably could coincide with the grant that we have through EDA. But I have an email right now into the Economic Development Administration checking to see if that complicates our agreement we've already signed with them. And I've not heard back from them. So if that somehow compromises that grant, it doesn't make sense to use it. Okay. Any questions?
Ned?
If we take the site-specific assessment, we accept that, and they do the phase 1 and they do the phase 2, and this property would need a phase 2. Yep. What does that obligate us to, if anything?
Nothing.
We just get a written document.
You're just going to know what's there, and it also doesn't. I talked again today. It doesn't obligate us in terms of like you can demo a building. They're perfectly fine with that, should that situation arise. So it really doesn't obligate us to anything. But if we wanted to take the next step to clean it up, we would then need to go into that voluntary cleanup program, which helps to oversee our cleanup efforts. And part of their intention in also possibly subdividing Kemper is that you don't want to stay in the program for 10 or 15 years because it can become costly. There is an annual fee for that oversight of their staff time, and you don't want to be in there for an extended time, so you would only put parcels in as you think you're going to be developing them.
Well, the phase 1 and the phase 2 don't disappear in 5 years or 10 years. It's a it's an inspection that's good for as many, for a decade or so.
No, they would require us to do an update, but again, conveniently enough, they will do the update for free, so you can have them do it again. If we did one now for the whole campus, and then in 10 years you wanted to do one on Academic Hall, they would come back and just update what they had already done, which wouldn't change dramatically unless we had people in there probably and major problems.
Mike?
You mentioned the subdivision approach to allow for 100,000 per. If we step forward with the site-specific work without subdividing, is that a problem later when we subdivide?
No, they said you can kind of like you can flip it into a nonprofit and then flip it back out. You can subdivide it and then unsubdivide it. So long as you all do the appropriate steps to make that happen and then can show them the appropriate paperwork, you are in the clear.
Just a quick comment for Earl. We had talked about getting information on the demolition on the administration building. One of the things that would be extraordinarily helpful with this phase 1, phase 2 is to find out if that whole underground heating system is a problem, or whether or not it can just stay there and it doesn't have to be pulled out. And the phase 1, phase 2 would tell us that.
It would. I guess the only bottleneck is I've already commissioned that work.
Okay.
So,
Other questions?
is the grant available in a demo context?
For EIERA, yes. We will pay for a demolition if you can demonstrate that that's the best use and best purpose for a building, that it's overly expensive to do something else.
Okay.
So as part of this whole process, it's critical that we have that campus-wide plan. Our comprehensive plan is going to be our backbone to justify a lot of these activities and subdivisions.
And I think that potentially the phase 1 and phase 2 may complement the overall strategic plan, because it'll kind of give you an idea in terms of remediation as those opportunities come up for various buildings in Marcia's strategic plan, to kind of know where we're at.
Mike?
So if I got this right, it would behoove us to step out with the phase 1, phase 2 as soon as possible. Would we have to specify that we want to have a certain building done first, like the science building, so that it's done, or they come and do it at the same time?
Well, she told me when I talked with Catherine today, and I didn't talk in great detail about what the process would be until I knew where you guys wanted to go, but she said it could take as much as 6 months to do the whole campus, just because it is a really large project. It's not like one building. So it could take a while, but I'm sure in our agreements we could try to see if we could get some of that done in a different order.
Noah?
What's the cost again of phase 1, phase 2?
Nothing.
So no cost, no obligation. Where's the fine print at?
I'm not exactly sure. There is no obligation in terms of what you find out. They don't really have you're not committing yourself to anything else. But of course, you're going to want to do whatever you do responsibly. I mean, it's not going to excuse you from making irresponsible decisions.
Right.
Not that
The
you would
fine
do that.
print is that you will know.
Yes.
You
have
will
knowledge.
know.
That's the key.
Okay.
You have knowledge.
But everybody else will know.
You will know.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
But the point to that is, do we have any potential buyers that we don't want to tell them what we might know?
Oh, no. That's really not the issue, but there may be things there that you might have to take some action to rectify.
So, just one more quick question. That means we could take the action on one building and not the rest, as long as we subdivided the campus, right?
Theoretically.
The only thing is on a site-specific assessment, when you apply on a legal parcel of land. So it is currently one entire parcel. It's not subdivided.
Yeah.
So for the initial application, if you wanted to try to do it piecemeal, you'd have to subdivide first.
Right.
Then we'd have to apply, which was counter to what they recommended. I'm not saying that's good or bad, except for that they are much better at this program than I am, so.
But there's no advantage for the assessment part, right? the advantage is in the next step.
Right.
Which you could then do the subdivision after you got the results. Okay.
However, I'm sorry, but just to add on
Becky
that.
Header. Did I understand you to say, though, too, that we're not sure if this would include Science Hall with the
Well,
current?
Currently, it will, even if we do a phase one, if we do that, if we apply for that site-specific assessment, as it stands now, the YMCA will be included, as will Science Hall, because it is all one parcel. The only way we could exclude that is if before we applied, you somehow subdivided those things out of Kemper parcel, and then we applied with the new parcel or parcels that you created.
Mike?
I was just going to head that same direction, is that if time is of essence, we determine that the EDA says, yeah, go ahead, doesn't affect us, do whatever you want, and you want to step forward quickly to beat a 6-month or whatever window, then you have to kind of figure out what's the best to do with Science Hall specific at this time, relative to all this.
Because there's been some work done on that already as
Yeah.
part of the application. You know, Dave Gim went down there and walked through it and did some stuff there. So it may or may not be all that relevant in the context of that.
Yeah. And I think both Earl and I's concerns with the EDA is obviously one, flipping ownership. I'm not sure how the EDA is going to feel about trying to flip ownership in the middle. I have a feeling they're not going to be really big fans of that, but they haven't told me that yet. And then there was some context in their letter about if we raised more money, then it could throw off the ratio, and so we had to be careful. So that's what we're trying to make sure. We don't want to lose what they've already committed to us, so.
We'll give them half.
Other questions? So do we want to move forward with the site-specific assessments? Noah?
Yeah, I make a motion that we go ahead and pursue phase 1 and phase 2.
Okay,
A second?
thank you, Becky. Further discussion or questions? Roll call.
Carter,
Yes.
Ayers,
Yes.
Heaton,
Yes.
Young,
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes?
Meadows,
Yes.
Beach,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kate, for doing that. Item D, bunker land lease with Department of Natural Resources. Who wants to lead off on that? Megan? Earl?
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
maybe
is, this is a draft lease. It's pretty much mirrors the last couple leases that we have negotiated with Department of Natural Resources. When we refer to the bunker area, that really term actually came from DNR. It's the section of land that DNR owns. They got it as part of the Katy Trail, Rails to Trails project. And it's the area that's just right south of the entrance to the Katy Bridge, north of Morgan Street and the Katy Depot. And our primary interest in the property, as we've talked about in development of that whole area down there, is to have an area for some gathering and some parking as an entrance to the Katy Bridge. The one nice thing that we negotiated with them, Earl said, you know, every time we get one of these projects, we have to go in and test and do some environmental and this and that. And he said it's not cheap, and they were willing to waive the rental fee for this tract, as well as several of the other tracts that we've negotiated as is in this contract, to offset those costs. So that was a nice gesture on their part. Even though it is a minimal cost, it does provide us some funding for that. But again, it's the 25 and 25, and it's presented here tonight for your comment. And if there's any questions or concerns that you have, it is a fairly standard lease, other than what the uses are and the preservation cost waiver under Section 5.
Comments? Noah?
Yeah, not that I'm complaining about the price, because it seems pretty reasonable, but can you speak to how the 625 was derived? that something they came up with, or is that something we came up with, or how did that amount come about?
Yeah, it's kind of their standard
Must be
price.
something with them, because it's the same amount that's on the Gingrich bill.
Okay.
But at any rate, they're waiving that.
Sure, but I was just wondering, I didn't know.
I don't
They
know
did
how,
by
I
square
think they
footage or
just
something,
saw
or-
that's what it was in the other one, so just
Okay.
same number, so. We need to get this clarified in some sense, because we encroach into this area a bit on adjusting the grade of the trail and constructing the trail actually when it goes on to the new replacement span over the bridge. So at some point, we have to either have a lease here or get some other permissions or something with the state to work, and they're gonna want a stage there and all that kind of stuff too. So we'd like to move forward with this, and then Kate also wants to apply for an application to do a little access roads and parking, maybe a little lighting, and a few other things. And you can't do that if you can't demonstrate control of the property, if I'm correct. Because we withdrew it last year, and it was probably premature anyway, but, so we'd like to resolve it so we can take some additional steps related.
And this was included with the first stage of the redevelopment of the bridge, the approach, the ramping and all of that. I think you showed it to us on the maps.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we
These
had it in
little
there.
slivers of
Yeah.
ground
And then,
that go
when
with
we
it.
presented that, we assumed we could get access to this area. Okay, now we have access to this area, this lease. And it took us a while because DNR's got a lot of projects on their list, and so we needed to finalize and be able to show good faith effort to make sure this was going to be protected and an integral part of the trail and so forth. And so I think we've finally gotten that now and preserved to the best of our ability what's down there, and continued their access to the metal building so they can put their tractor and mowing equipment in there and so forth. So we've kind of negotiated those little nuances to where we can all be satisfied.
Is it appropriate to move to do this?
We'll bring it back with a
Yeah,
resolution.
I think if you have any problems with it, now's the time to speak up and say, hey, why are we doing this, that, or the other? Otherwise, they'll put the new paint on it and bring it back to us
Great.
in a meeting.
Yeah, we'll do an ordinance. Thanks.
You're due.
New business, we have none. Reports of standing committees, cemetery board, Steve?
You see the minutes on the form here. We did take a tour. It's kind of interesting to see what Boonville actually manages. I wasn't sure when I was put on the board, so now I know.
To learn.
Did you pick a spot up?
No.
Okay. Any questions for Steve? Okay, thank you, Steve. Street and alley, Noah?
Yeah, the minutes are here in the packet. Really, we only have one topic. We're discussing large trucks, semis, and buses taking up more than one parking spot. And we actually didn't come to any conclusions. We just tabled the issue and asked Mel to research, I think through the police department. I don't know if we found anything out.
Well, I need to discuss it with the chief, but I think his preliminary opinion is that we have nothing that covers for the parallel spaces. There is something that, the way you word the diagonal spaces, but there's only some diagonal spaces on the west end, so nothing covers everything.
Okay, all right. No conclusion there. We'll just keep it going.
Nothing in the existing ordinance covers.
How's the Chestnut Street?
We had another one last week,
Got
2
High
weeks,
Center?
but I guess, are the signs up yet?
There's one by my house, in the corner of my house. I don't know on Main Street, though.
Well, I saw one of the signs, the sign northbound. I can't say that I've seen every single sign up, so yeah, the signs are up or monthly, so.
I haven't gone to look on Main Street. When I looked, it wasn't there, but that was over a week ago. It is up on my corner, but by then, they're already down across from Noah's house looking at the sign if they see it.
Yeah, there are two kinds of signs. There's a northbound, a southbound Main Street sign with an arrow pointing down the street, no vehicles or whatever it says.
And then there's a sign, no through trucks, that it's going to go at Third and Fourth or Second, something like that.
Looks to me like they're coming down Spring Street, turning into Second Street and doing a U-turn. You can see the wheel marks in the chip and seal.
I was wondering how they were doing that. I saw
Because
them
it's a
park.
big, wide street, so you can just see it. It's getting chewed up. I don't know that it's damaging yet, because that chip comes off, but that's what I can see they're doing.
Which coming down Spring is,
Yeah, as far
accessible
as
to a big
Spring
truck.
Street, I don't.
And that
I'm
might
not
be
sure
the
what
unintended consequences of us shutting them off.
Yeah, I think that's their adaptation, yeah.
As an aside to that, I discovered in a newsletter I get from actually KDOT, a way to access GPS manufacturers to give them updates. Unfortunately, it's a complicated route, and sometimes you access directly to TomTom or Garmin or whomever, and sometimes you go to a contractor, and from what I gathered from the article, unless you're willing to shotgun letters and map updates, updating GPS information is doable but difficult and time-consuming. And that's how we would eliminate this. We'd do some sort of update, but who's to say whatever.
Yeah, because everybody that comes down there said they're using their GPS, but the GPS doesn't indicate there's a giant hill there that's flat, so they don't know until they get there. So.
Okay. Planning and zoning, Ned?
It's kind of exciting to have activity. The Casey's project is moving along, and it's good to see some things happening down there. Great discussion about solar photovoltaic regulations. Tom Maxwell and David Day and Jim Gann had some great questions, and I think it was a little frustrating for Megan, but I think we moved along a little
Nope,
bit.
it's evolving so quickly that by the time we get one set of changes done, we've had experience with
Right.
4 or 5 more. So I think we're getting there. I think we're fine tuning, and that's fine. But we'll get it.
Good stuff.
Any questions for Ned? Police board, Steve?
The meeting was basically a budget meeting for Chief Welliver. He basically went through his budget with the board and discussed equipment he plans to purchase this year and vehicles.
Okay. Reports of city officials, city administrator, Earl?
Yeah, I just wanted to, poll the council about some meeting dates. We're all, I think, anxious to try to get on with the economic development structure or entity. You recall we had the one closed meeting on that. And we haven't made the progress that the mayor and I'd like because of some, health issues among the other parties, but hopefully that's coming to an end, and we at least have something in draft form in terms of like a scope of work and a contractual arrangement soon. So I wondered, with the holidays coming up, what kind of people's schedule we have, say for a week from tonight on the 23rd, or whatever, rather than waiting clear till the meeting in January. So I don't have a specific date or time in mind other than the 23rd is the first, and that may be premature even now, but does anybody have any?
I'll be out of town.
For what period?
23rd, 24th, 25th, I come home on the 26th.
So that week's pretty much shot. So how about the week of New Year's?
I'm available whenever you want to meet.
How about the 30th, the week
30th?
Week of New Year's?
30th is fine.
30th is fine.
All right, well, we'll shoot for that. That may be a little more realistic anyway. We'll send out a notice if that gels. And probably some paperwork.
Tentatively 6 or 7?
Yeah, we can do that early, I think.
Does that work for you, Susan, 6
Yeah, I
o'clock?
can get back.
Followed by pre-New Year spirits.
If we can meet off city property and maybe.
New Year's Eve.
If it is open.
There you go. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Earl. Just a quick reminder, this Thursday, December 18th, Wednesday, December 18th, The American Pickers episode that was filmed in Boonville will be aired at 8 o'clock on the History Channel. Of course, this episode features Pam Davis and Stanley Thomas, and will also have a special focus on the Katy Bridge and its restoration. I know there's several watch parties that are going to be held around town, including Maggie's, Cooper's Oak, WJ's, Phoenix, and Pirates Cove. So if you're interested in watching this and being with other people in the community that make this a very special episode, and so that is Wednesday. And my final note is, on a personal note, 21 years ago, Mayor Bud Kempf appointed me to the Parks Board. After 10 years serving on the Parks Board, Danielle Blank asked me to run for Ward 1 councilperson, which I did, and served on the City Council for 7 additional years. 4 years ago, I ran a contested race for mayor and won. When I signed up to run for mayor, one of my reasons was that I had the time and energy to devote to the job. In the subsequent 4 years, my life has changed, and I feel I no longer have the time needed to be an effective mayor, so I will not be running for re-election for mayor. So, since tomorrow's the day, I just wanted everybody to know.
Thank you for your service.
City Councilor, do you have anything?
I don't have anything further this evening.
City Clerk?
Well, as Julie just mentioned, tomorrow is the opening date for the filing period. It will start at 8 a.m. tomorrow to 5:30, and then all the days thereafter, the weekdays thereafter, will be from 8:30 to 5. The closing date is January 21st. So you can come in and see me. I've got paperwork there to be filled out and completed, and we'll get you on the way. Secondly, I would like to thank the volunteer bell ringers that we had last Friday for the Salvation Army. The weather wasn't exactly the most pleasant day that we could have had, but everybody showed up. I was very proud of them, and I thank them. Individually, they were Teresa Studley, Cheryl Imhoff, Bill Sterling, Mark Strange, Carrie Shipman, Patrick Ziegelbin, Russell Gerling, Jeff Ballrath, Guy Kaiser, Jesse Kieran, Chris King, Kate Fiel, Sherry Broyles, Chad Wilson, Mark Weibel, and myself. Again, I thank all of them, and I know the Salvation Army thanks them also. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Miscellaneous.
Just a reminder, as we've done every winter the last several years, the transfer station will be closed starting Saturday, January 4th, and it'll be closed on Saturdays through the first Saturday in March. We've done that for a number of years because there simply is too little traffic on Saturday to warrant keeping the facility open.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Any other miscellaneous? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Are a second? Second. Thank you, Becky.
Everybody wants
All
to-
those in favor say aye.
Jumping on that one.
Thank you, Becky.